So uh, imagine spending your entire weekends scrubbing an empty apartment top to bottom.
Yeah.
I mean, your knees ache, your hands are completely raw, but, the place looks absolutely immaculate.
Right. You feel pretty good about it at that point.
Exactly. You hand over the keys and you're totally confident you're getting that, say, $800 security deposit back. But then 2 weeks later, an itemized bill arrives.
And you're getting absolutely nothing back.
Nothing. In fact, it says you owe them $50.
Yeah.
And you're just sitting there wondering why. Well, it's because the landlord found, like, microscopic grease on the rubber seal of the refrigerator, or maybe calcification on the shower door, and a thin layer of dust sitting on top of the living room ceiling fan.
It is a universally infuriating scenario. I mean, it really is. And it happens because we fundamentally misunderstand what is actually happening during a move-out inspection.
Yeah.
We treat cleaning as an aesthetic exercise, We look around and we ask, does this room look good to me?
Right. Does it look clean?
Exactly. But your landlord isn't looking at aesthetics at all. They're conducting a forensic audit of their asset.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are looking at the highly militarized, totally invisible battlefield of house cleaning. We're pulling from a really fascinating stack of materials authored by John Constantine for What a Maid LLC, which is a professional service operating out of Phoenix, Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And the mission today for us, and for you listening, is to completely reframe how you think about crime. We're going to explore how this seemingly mundane chore is actually this high-stakes web of hidden economics, complex chemistry, and literal geographical warfare.
It really shifts your entire perspective because, well, once you understand mechanics of how dirt actually interacts with a physical environment, you realize that cleaning isn't just about hygiene.
No, not at all.
It's a strategic financial decision, and that impacts everyone from a first-time renter to a massive real estate management firm.
So let's start right at that highest stakes moment, which is the move out. When you look at the actual checklists that property managers use, it is staggering. I mean, they aren't looking at the middle of the living room floor. They're hunting entirely in the margins.
Right, because landlords operate systematically. Tenants, on the other hand, clean emotionally.
Clean emotionally. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. When you move out, you're exhausted. You vacuum the high-traffic areas, you wipe down the shiny kitchen island, and you just assume the sheer effort you put in will be recognized.
Like, look how hard I worked.
Exactly. But the landlord's checklist is derived directly from the lease agreement, which is a legally binding contract protecting a physical asset. So they skip the kitchen island and go straight for the functional components of the appliances.
And this is where the dollar amounts get just brutal. Like, the data shows landlords deducting $50 to $150 just because the inside of the oven wasn't degreased.
Yeah.
Or $30 to $80 for the rubber seals inside the refrigerator doors. I mean, who even thinks to clean the accordion folds of a fridge seal?
Very few people, which is exactly why it's a guaranteed deduction for them. But let's look at the why behind that. Landlords aren't charging $80 because they're, offended by the sight of a dirty fridge seal.
Right.
They are charging you because accumulated grease and food microparticles physically break down that specific type of rubber over time.
Wait, so the dirt is actually destroying the appliance?
Yes, literally destroying it. When that rubber gasket degrades, the seal fails. And when the seal fails, cold air leaks out.
Oh, wow.
And when cold air leaks, the refrigerator's compressor has to run like 20% harder just to maintain the internal temperature. Eventually, that compressor burns out completely, and now the landlord has to replace a $1,500 appliance.
So it's not about the visual at all?
Not at all. They aren't penalizing you for a lack of visual cleanliness. They're penalizing you for accelerating the depreciation of their property.
Okay, let's unpack this, because it sounds like landlords aren't just checking to see if the place looks clean. They're conducting a forensic crime scene investigation. It's like leaving one fingerprint on a ceiling fan. Costs you $40.
It really is. And the ceiling fan is a perfect example.
Yeah, the data-highlighted ceiling fans is a huge trap. If you have a house with 5 ceiling fans and you forget to wipe the tops of the blades, you could be hit with a $40 deduction per fan. That's $200 gone, just because you didn't climb on a chair and look up.
And again, think about the mechanics of the HVAC system here. If a ceiling fan is coated in a thick layer of dust, the moment the new tenant turns it on, that dust is violently thrown into the air.
Right.
It gets sucked into the intake vents and immediately clogs the home's air filters. which degrades the efficiency of the entire air conditioning unit.
It's all connected.
It is entirely connected. It's all about mechanical wear and tear.
Okay, but let's talk about the ultimate trap, which is the carpet. The materials emphasize that many modern leases strictly require a professional receipt for carpet cleaning.
Yes.
So like, if you go to the hardware store, rent a DIY extraction machine, and spend your entire Saturday shampooing the floors until they look brand new.
The landlord can still hit you with a $300 deduction.
But why? If it's clean, why does it matter?
Because a DIY rental receipt doesn't fulfill the legal requirement of the lease. From the landlord's perspective, those rental machines often lack the suction power to extract the water they put down.
Oh, so they leave it soaked.
Exactly. Which can leave moisture deep in the carpet pad, potentially causing mold. They want to guarantee that commercial-grade extraction was performed. If you can't hand them a third-party professional receipt, your DIY labor means absolutely nothing.
So if the checklist is this draconian and the physical labor is this intense, why is it so incredibly hard to just beat the system? I read through the Phoenix-specific data, and it paints a picture of an environment that is actively trying to destroy the house from the outside in.
Well, when you're dealing with a climate like the Sonoran Desert, you aren't just cleaning up your own messes. You are engaged in a constant battle against geology.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, and I have to push back on this a little bit because I read those sections and I kept thinking, dust is dust, you know? Every city has dust. Every city has hard water. Is a place like Phoenix actually a unique cleaning environment, or is blaming the desert just a really convenient excuse for why someone failed their move-out inspection?
I get why you'd think that, but it is genuinely unique, down to the molecular level. Let's take the water first.
Yeah.
Phoenix sits on a water supply that is incredibly hard.
Right.
We are talking 15 to 20 grains of minerals per gallon. It is heavily saturated with calcium and magnesium.
Which causes those white, crusty rings around the sink faucets and the cloudy streaks on the glass shower doors.
Exactly. Now, a tenant moves out, grabs a standard bottle of bathroom cleaner from the grocery store, and scrubs that glass door for an hour. The glass is still cloudy, and the landlord deducts $100. Why?
Let me guess, it's not the right chemical.
Exactly. Basic chemistry. Most standard household soaps and cleaners are alkaline. Those hard water minerals, the calcium and magnesium, are also highly alkaline.
You can't clean an alkaline mineral with an alkaline soap.
You physically cannot. Trying to scrub away calcified hard water stains with grocery store soap is like trying to melt a block of ice with a flashlight.
That's a great way to put it.
You aren't creating the necessary chemical reaction, you're just making the surface wet.
Sure.
To actually break the molecular bond of those minerals, you need commercial-grade, highly acidic descaling agents. If you don't have the right chemistry, you lose your deposit. It's that simple.
And then there's the dust. The analysis of the desert dust storms, the haboobs, is genuinely terrifying.
Oh, they are intense.
A wall of sand rolls through the valley, turns the sky a post-apocalyptic orange, and pushes fine particulate matter through every microscopic crack in the house.
Because desert dust is not like the dust you find in a typical temperate climate. Normal dust is largely made up of dead skin cells and fabric fibers, but desert dust contains high levels of silica.
So it's basically sand.
It is microscopic sand, and it's highly abrasive.
Which totally explains why the window tracks are such a massive trap on the landlord's checklist. If that silica dust builds up in the tracks of a sliding glass patio door, it acts like sandpaper. It grinds down the ball bearings of the door every time you open it until the door derails entirely.
Exactly. And because that dust is so fine, traditional cleaning methods fail completely.
Really, like just regular mopping.
Oh, absolutely. If you use a standard string mop on a tile floor covered in desert dust, you aren't removing the dust. You're just mixing it with water to create a fine mud, and then pushing it deep into the porous grout lines where it permanently stains. And if you use a cheap vacuum, the filter isn't fine enough to capture the particulate matter, so you're just sucking the dust off the carpet and violently exhausting it back into the breathing air.
So you need HEPA filtration vacuums to actually pull the dirt out of the environment. And specific microfiber techniques to capture the grit rather than just wiping it into the air?
Yes, the tools required to actually win this battle are highly specialized.
Okay, so let's run the math on this, because this brings us to what the data calls the DIY delusion.
Yes, the DIY delusion.
We have an environment that requires industrial chemistry and HEPA filtration, and a landlord operating with a forensic, financially punitive checklist. Why on earth do people still try to do this themselves?
It stems from a very common miscalculation of how we value our own labor versus how we perceive risk. People look at the upfront cost of hiring a professional, say $300, and think, I can just do it myself this weekend and save that money.
So what does this all mean? If we actually break down the true cost of doing it yourself, doing a move-out clean to save money is like doing your own complex corporate taxes to save $50, only to trigger an audit that costs you hundreds. You're tripping over dollars to pick up pennies.
That's a perfect analogy. Let's say you have a standard two-bedroom apartment. Doing a proper lease-compliant deep clean is going to take you roughly 10 to 12 hours of grueling physical labor.
At least.
You have to go buy $100 worth of chemical supplies and scrubbers. You have to spend $50 renting the carpet cleaner. You're already $150 out of pocket.
And the tragic part is, because you lack the acidic descalers for the hard water, and because you probably missed the top of the ceiling fans, you still fail the inspection.
Right. The average deposit loss in these scenarios still lands between $300 and $800. So you spent your entire weekend doing manual labor, you spent money on supplies, and you still lost a $500 deposit.
You are literally paying money for the privilege of scrubbing your own toilets. It's wild.
It completely flips how you should view the service industry. If we connect this to the bigger picture, hiring a professional in this context isn't a luxury. And it isn't about laziness. It is a highly effective form of risk management.
Let's dig into that risk management angle, because there was a concept in the data that completely blew my mind. The idea that you aren't actually paying for a clean house. You are paying for a legal shield.
The documentation shield.
Yeah.
Yes, this is arguably the most critical takeaway. When you hire a legitimate professional service, you are walking away with a date-stamped, itemized invoice from a registered LLC detailing exactly what was done. The HEPA vacuuming, the acidic descaling, the carpet extraction, all of it.
But how does that actually change the dynamic with the landlord?
It fundamentally shifts the legal burden of proof. Imagine a small claims court scenario. If you clean the apartment yourself and the landlord says the carpet is dirty, your only defense is, well, I cleaned it.
Right. It's just an opinion.
It's he said, she said, and the landlord's photos will usually win. But if you hand the landlord a commercial invoice, you have introduced third-party documentation.
So if the landlord tries to deduct money now, they aren't just disagreeing with your opinion. They are effectively accusing a licensed commercial entity of fraud.
Exactly. It neutralizes the dispute before it even begins. Property managers know that fighting a third-party commercial invoice in court is incredibly difficult and rarely worth their time. That piece of paper is a legal shield that protects your $800 deposit.
That is brilliant. You're buying leverage. But, if a dirty sink or a dusty fan costs a single renter a few $100, what happens when we scale this up? Because the data also looks at how this hygiene economy applies to short-term rentals, like Airbnbs and traditional property management.
Oh, when you move into the business sector, the stakes multiply exponentially. In the short-term rental market, cleanliness ceases to be a maintenance issue. It becomes the actual product you are selling.
They call it the Airbnb cliff, and the algorithm behind it is just ruthless. I mean, a turnover for a vacation rental takes about 3 to 4 hours, and it requires literal hotel-level perfection. You cannot miss a single stray hair in the bathroom or a single smudge on a window.
You can't, because the punishment from the platform's algorithm is immediate and severe.
Yes. The numbers here are wild.
Wow.
You would think a 4.6 or 4.7 star rating is great, right? That's an A- in school.
Sure, normally would be.
But on these platforms, a 4.7 isn't a goal. It is the absolute floor for survival. If a guest finds dust on a baseboard and leaves a single dirty review, your overall rating can dip. And if it drops below that 4.7 threshold, the algorithm actively buries your listing.
The platform's algorithm is designed to eliminate risk for the user. A 4.6 rating signals to the system that there is a statistical probability of a bad guest experience. So instead of being on page 1 of the search results, your property is pushed to page 6.
And nobody clicks on page 6.
Nobody. Your bookings plummet by 30 to 50% practically overnight. You could lose thousands of dollars in monthly revenue simply because a cleaner missed the coffee pot.
And for traditional property managers dealing with long-term unfurnished rentals, the math is just as brutal, but it revolves entirely around turnaround time.
Right, the Friday to Monday flip. A tenant moves out on Friday afternoon. The property manager has the new tenant scheduled to move in on Monday morning. You have exactly 48 hours to inspect the property, fix any drywall damage, paint, and do a massive deep clean.
So if a property manager relies on a slow, cheap cleaner, or if a tenant's DIY cleaning job fails the inspection and requires a redo, that Monday move-in is delayed.
Exactly. And if you push a move-in back by a week, you just lost a week of prorated rent, which would easily be $400 to $800. So paying a highly efficient professional crew $350 to swarm the house and flip it in one day isn't an expense. It is literally an efficiency play to save a week of revenue.
It is all interconnected economics. But beyond the pure financials, the data also reveals some fascinating, highly counterintuitive strategies about the biology of cleaning, particularly when we look at the seasons.
Right.
Okay, I have to stop you here, because this was the one part of the analysis where I was completely throwing my hands up.
Yeah.
The data claims that for a place like Phoenix, the absolute best time to invest in deep carpet cleaning is in the middle of winter.
Yep.
Wait, winter. Everyone always talks about spring cleaning. That makes zero sense to me.
Yeah.
Culturally, we're entirely programmed for spring cleaning. Winter is when everyone is inside, hosting holiday parties, tracking in mud and dirt.
Why on earth would you spend money to clean a carpet right when it's taking the most abuse? Wouldn't you just wait until spring to wash it all away?
I know it sounds totally backwards, but this raises an important question about how HVAC systems and indoor air quality actually function. In extreme climates, seasonal behaviors force us to seal our homes. During the winter, you are entirely correct. Foot traffic is highest, and unique winter soil compositions are being dragged indoors.
But more importantly, all your windows are shut tight, and your heating system is constantly recycling the exact same air.
So you are basically locking yourself in a sealed box.
Precisely. The carpet acts as the largest biological filter in your home. It traps all that soil, the pet dander, the dust mites, and the winter allergens. If you wait until April to clean your carpets, you are voluntarily living inside a sealed box with festering biological contaminants for 3 solid months during peak respiratory illness season.
Oh, wow. I'd never thought about it like that.
You aren't cleaning the carpet in December for aesthetic reasons to make it look pretty for a party. You are extracting particulate matter from your primary breathing zone to protect your respiratory health when you are most confined to the space. Waiting until spring is a massive tactical error in environmental defense.
That completely flips the paradigm. It's not about how the carpet looks, it's about what the carpet is holding, which actually ties perfectly into the final concept we need to touch on, the psychology of how we schedule our cleaning.
Yeah.
Because there is a profound difference between reactive cleaning and over-cleaning.
And both of them carried a really heavy psychological toll. Reactive cleaning is exactly what it sounds like, waiting until the environment is visibly dirty before taking action.
But the underlying mechanism there is that dirt compounds, right? It has a magnetic effect. Like if you leave one piece of mail on the kitchen counter, you are visually signaling to everyone in the house that the counter is now a dumping ground. Within 2 days, it's covered in keys, jackets, and more mail.
It is the domestic equivalent of the broken windows theory. A small amount of visible neglect invites further neglect. A dusty corner attracts pet hair, which traps moisture, which binds the dust to the baseboard. By the time you reactively decide to clean it, you aren't doing a 20-minute touch-up. You're facing a 6-hour restoration project.
Right. But the inverse is just as damaging, over-cleaning. If you try to fight that compounding effect by scrubbing every surface every single day, you burn out completely. You waste a fortune on expensive chemical descalers, and your entire personality becomes managing the anxiety of a dusty baseboard.
It's a razor-thin balance between mental health and burnout. The goal isn't necessarily a perpetually pristine house. The goal is creating a sustainable system, often by leveraging professional intervention at strategic intervals that removes the emotional weight of the chore. You want to free yourself from the guilt of the space.
So, to summarize what we've unpacked today, keeping a space clean, especially when you factor in hostile environments like the Sonoran Desert, algorithmic penalties on Airbnbs, and the forensic audits of landlords, is so much more than a weekend chore. It is an exercise in asset protection, an environmental defense strategy, and a complex economic equation.
Absolutely. And for you listening right now, whether you are preparing for a move and trying to get your deposit back on an apartment, managing an Airbnb rating, or just battling the dust on a calcified shower door in your own home, remember that your time has a highly specific dollar value. And in a world governed by lease agreements and algorithms, third-party documentation is your ultimate legal shield.
You simply cannot win a modern dispute without the receipts. It really makes you rethink the entire concept of domestic life. You know, we touched on that heavy mental load earlier, the guilt you feel when you walk past a dirty room or a cloudy mirror. You look at it and you think, I am failing at keeping my life organized.
Yeah.
But looking at all this data, it leaves me with one final provocative thought.
What's that?
Well, if our physical environment, the relentless silica desert dust, the extreme mineral content in the water, if that dictates so much of the decay inside our homes, how much of our daily domestic anxiety is actually just a geographical mismatch?
A geographical mismatch.
Yeah, I mean, are we actually bad at cleaning, or are we just trying to fight a highly specific geological war using the wrong weapons? We blame ourselves for being messy, but maybe our stress is just a symptom of using a grocery store mop in a HEPA vacuum world. The next time you look at a dusty window track and judge yourself, take a breath. It might not be a reflection of your character. It might just be the desert trying to take back its territory, one grain of sand at a time.